New development to tell you about in the $250 million civil trial against ex-President Donald Trump and his company and his family. Today, Judge Engoron ruled that the former president's daughter Ivanka does have to testify in this case. Ivanka's lawyers had challenged the subpoena issued by the New York Attorney General on the basis that an appeals court this summer ruled Ivanka should not be a defendant due to the statute of limitations. But Judge Engoron sided with New York Attorney General Letitia James, who had said in a court filing this, quote, while no longer a defendant in this action, she indisputably has personal knowledge of facts relevant to the claims against the remaining individuals and entity defendants. But even beyond that, Ms. Trump remains financially and professionally intertwined with the Trump Organization and other defendants and can be called as a person still under their control. During last year's January 6 congressional hearings, we saw Ivanka Trump testify against her father.
When I entered the office the second time, he was on the telephone with who I later found out to be was the vice president.
Could you hear the vice president or only hear the president's end?
The conversation was pretty heated. It was a different tone than I'd heard him take with the vice president before.
Many of President Trump's White House staff also recognized that the evidence did not support the claims President Trump was making.
How did that affect your perspective about the election when Attorney General Barr made that statement?
It affected my perspective. I respect Attorney General Barr. So I accepted what he was saying.
Which by default means I did not believe what my father was saying. Now it looks like she'll be forced to testify against her father once again, although the judge said that Ivanka Trump would not be called before November 1st, part of a long line of Trumps to take the stand in this trial in the coming days. That's what we wanted to ask our friend Neil Katyal. Neil Katyal, you've been standing by for us. Is this going to happen?
It's almost certainly going to happen. And that picture that you just showed, Nicole, of the Trump sons and Ivanka and Trump all testifying is really quite striking. I mean, you know the old saying, families who commit fraud together end up in court together. And that sure looks like what is going to happen. Ivanka is going to try and appeal this, as I understand it. Her claim is that she's outside the jurisdiction of the state of New York, and so New York has no sovereignty over her. That is a weak claim at best, as the judge today found. She's totally intertwined with the Trump Organization. She's happy to take the profits from the Trump Organization when they sell a hotel. She's happy to take lawyers' fees from the Trump Organization. She's happy to have the Trump Organization buy her insurance, including her workers' comp insurance. So the idea that she has nothing to do with the Trump Organization, which is based in New York, is, I think, pretty fanciful. So, you know, to me, I look at this as just another example of the Trump MO, which is it's not just the grift and intimidation and obfuscation. At bottom, it's the law doesn't apply to us mentality. We are above the law. You can't touch us, state of New York. And I think the judge today rightly, said that was poppycock.
So, Barbara McQuaid, how does it work? If she's a witness, does Trump's legal team cross-examine her? I mean, how does this work?
Yes, it's important to remember that all three of the Trump children are not being called to testify because of their relationship with Donald Trump as his children. They're being called because of their roles in the Trump Organization. And so I imagine that the Attorney General will want to ask Ivanka Trump questions about some of the financial dealings she was involved in. There's reporting that says that she was involved in negotiating and obtaining financing for some of the Trump properties. So those will be the kinds of questions that the Attorney General will want to ask. And then, yes, the Trump lawyers will cross-examine her. Now, it'll be a friendly. It won't be the kind of heated thing you might see where somebody tries to undermine the witness's credibility. Instead, I imagine they will use leading questions to try to bolster Trump's position or suggest that she lacks knowledge or some other aspect of that. So they'll talk with her with kid gloves, but they will no doubt get an opportunity to cross-examine her testimony.
I love, first of all, Neil Katyal saying poppycock, always like.
I wrote it down.
Always makes me smile on a Friday afternoon. And also the family quote, which I started thinking about Tolstoy, and Tolstoy every all happy families are alike, and every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Every unhappy family that's been dragged into court testifies against each other in its own way. Apparently, like in the way they're about to here. We're doing on Sunday night's episode of The Circus, we're examining in careful detail the real parallels between Trump as mob boss and how he's being prosecuted and pursued now in the way that prosecutors go after mob bosses. And it makes me think, what Barb just said, which is that Ivanka is not being brought in as a member of the family, meaning the family, but of the family, meaning the family in the sense that we use it in the context of organized crime cases. And that seems right. They are one of the many parallels between Trump and a lot of mobsters is the family business kind of quality to this. And what we know from various kinds of mob prosecutions, whether they're in civil court or in criminal court, is that, the members of the family all get brought in because of their relations, whether they're business relations or political connections or criminal connections, and they are forced to, in various ways, turn against the boss. And apparently, we're going to get to see that here. It's a great episode of Succession we got coming up here.
Yeah, I mean, look, and what's happening, like the trend line, Neil Katyal, is for all of Trump's former Trumpiest, most enthusiastic coup participants legally, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, Chesbrough, they've all flipped. I imagine it's more complicated for the family, but Ivanka Trump, what does she do when she goes in court?
You're exactly right. The chickens are coming home to roost. Many of Trump's main lawyers, the kookiest ones, have now all admitted they committed various crimes. And so, I agree with Barbara that I think initially the cross-examination and the cross-examination by Trump of Ivanka and the two sons will be friendly. But, Ivanka's already provided some testimony against her father, and it wouldn't shock me if there's a lot more to come. And so the real question to me, picking up on John Heilman's, two definitions of family, is how long is it going to take Donald Trump to attack his own daughter if, as I suspect, she reveals damaging information about him?
It's amazing. It ties my brain in.
The moment's going to come when Trump's going to say, Ivanka Trump, barely met her. Hardly know her.
Wasn't my favorite daughter.
I know who that person is. I barely recognize that woman. She barely my daughter. If she was my daughter, just for a second, I barely, hardly.
Yeah, she's living far away from Mar-a-Lago, way far away in Miami, Barbara McQuaid.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, I think, in this case for him to distance himself from his children. But I imagine it'll be sort of the way I've seen this happen in courtrooms where, the bank robber defendant, his lawyer calls his mother to testify and talk about what a good boy he is, or their pastor to talk about how good he is. And the technique on cross-examination there is often not to beat up the mother or the pastor, but instead to suggest that they just don't know some of these things, right? Ivanka Trump, you were a White House senior advisor, isn't that right? So you were busy with your own job, isn't that right? And so you couldn't possibly know all the things that were going on here. So I imagine the cross-examination will be something like that to try to put some distance between them in terms of their knowledge. It might succeed with Ivanka Trump. I think it's going to be much more difficult with Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., who, of course, had major roles with these organizations.
Before this is over, we're going to see Barron and Tiffany are going to be in here as Trump's going to call them in as character witnesses because he's got to find some of my kids who like me.
Whenever you say something won't happen in the Trump story, you're wrong. So I will make no predictions.